Part 1, The Toxic Feast. The orange sun cast long shadows across the crystalline desert as Captain Jackson Reeves casually turned another poisonous-looking creature over the makeshift fire. His muscular torso gleamed with sweat in the alien twilight, tactical vest hanging loosely from his broad shoulders. The creature, something between a crab and a centipede, sizzled appetizingly despite its intimidating appearance. Across the fire, Princess Litera watched in horror as the human prepared to consume what her people considered a deadly toxin carrier. Her golden eyes widened, long pointed ears twitching with anxiety. The form-fitting light armor she wore did little to hide her trembling. "You can't possibly eat that," she protested, her melodic voice tinged with genuine concern. "The Crimson Crawler contains enough neurotoxins to kill 3 Navari warriors." Jackson flashed her a roguish grin, his light blue eyes twinkling with mischief. "Princess, there's something you should know about humans." He tore off a leg and popped it into his mouth, chewing with obvious relish. "We can digest pretty much anything." Litera's porcelain skin paled even further as she watched him devour the creature with gusto. How are you not dead?" "Human stomach acid is strong enough to dissolve metal," he explained between bites. "Our liver can process toxins that would kill most species. Hell, some of our favorite foods on Earth are technically poisons: caffeine, capsaicin, alcohol." He grinned again. "We're walking chemical processing plants." Their ship had crashed on this abandoned mining world 3 days ago. While Litera had been paralyzed with fear about their food supplies running low, Jackson had approached their survival with almost cheerful enthusiasm. "But surely you must be more careful," she insisted, watching him tear into another leg. "Your species couldn't have evolved to handle alien biochemistry." Jackson shrugged his broad shoulders. "You'd be surprised. Humans evolved as persistence hunters and opportunistic omnivores. We can eat almost anything that contains carbon-based proteins. Our bodies are really good at figuring out what's useful and what's not." He offered her a piece of the perfectly cooked meat. "Want to try? I promise it's safe. Already tested it with the emergency medikit." Litera recoiled slightly, her long silver hair shimmering in the firelight. I think I'll stick to our emergency rations." "Suit yourself, princess. But those rations won't last forever. Sooner or later, you might have to trust my judgment on local cuisine." As night fell, Litera found herself stealing glances at her human companion. She had initially dismissed him as a reckless barbarian when they'd first met at the Galactic Peace Conference. Now, watching him confidently navigate their survival on this hostile world, she was beginning to see him in a different light. Jackson caught her staring and winked. "See something you like, princess?" She quickly looked away, grateful that her alien physiology didn't allow for blushing. "I'm merely studying your unusual dietary habits for scientific purposes." "Of course," he chuckled, stretching his muscular frame and making himself comfortable against a crystalline boulder. "Just remember, humans didn't become the galaxy's fastest expanding species by being picky eaters. Adaptability is our superpower." As the alien moons rose overhead, Litera found herself wondering what other surprises this fascinating human might have in store. Despite her initial reservations, she was beginning to understand why humans had earned their reputation as the most resilient species in known space. The next morning dawned with both suns painting the crystalline desert in shades of amber and rose. Jackson was already awake, performing his daily exercise routine, a habit that Litera found increasingly distracting. His muscular form moved with fluid grace through a series of complex movements, sweat glistening on his skin in the early light. "You're staring again, princess," he called out without breaking his rhythm, a knowing smile playing across his features. Litera quickly averted her golden eyes, her pointed ears twitching with embarrassment. "I was merely observing human physical maintenance rituals." "Of course," he chuckled, finally completing his routine and reaching for his water container. Just like I'm merely observing Navarian physiological responses to stress. The playful banter was interrupted and Jackson's emergency scanner began beeping. He pulled it from his tactical vest, studying the readout with growing interest. Well, looks like we might have found our ticket out of here, Princess. Litera moved closer, careful to maintain a proper distance despite her body's inexplicable urge to do otherwise. What have you found? There's an old mining complex about 2 clicks east, he explained, showing her the scanner display. The equipment there might still have enough power to boost our distress signal. Right now, we're barely reaching orbit. The abandoned mines? Litera's ears flattened against her head. They're notorious for being filled with crimson crawlers and worse. The toxin levels would be lethal. Jackson grinned that maddeningly confident expression that made her heart race in ways that definitely weren't covered in her diplomatic training. Lethal for most species, maybe. But for a human. He patted his stomach. Just another day at the office. You're impossible, she sighed, but couldn't help returning his smile. Though I must admit, your species' biological adaptability is impressive. Just impressive? He stepped closer, and Litera found herself acutely aware of his presence, his warmth, his scent, the way his eyes seemed to see right through her carefully maintained royal composure. Fascinating, she amended, her voice softer than intended. Perhaps even, remarkable. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the air between them crackled with something that transcended species barriers. Litera felt her pulse quicken, her alien biology responding to his proximity in ways she'd never experienced before. We should. She began, then had to clear her throat. We should prepare for the expedition. Right, Jackson agreed, though he didn't immediately step back. Wouldn't want to keep those toxic tunnels waiting. They gathered their essential supplies, working in a comfortable silence that was occasionally broken by stolen glances and subtle smiles. Litera found herself wondering if human mating rituals were as adaptable as their digestive systems, then immediately chastised herself for such inappropriate thoughts. The journey to the mining complex was uneventful, but it gave Litera plenty of time to observe Jackson in action. He moved with a predator's grace, constantly scanning their surroundings while maintaining a running commentary that mixed useful information with gentle teasing. You know, he said as they approached the mine entrance, back on Earth, some of our ancestors used to court each other by demonstrating their ability to provide food and protection. How primitive, Litera responded, though she couldn't hide her interest. Navarian courtship involves complex political negotiations and genetic compatibility studies. Sounds romantic, Jackson laughed. Though I have to say, there's something to be said for the primitive approach. Nothing brings people together quite like surviving dangerous situations. The mine entrance loomed before them, dark and forbidding. Litera's scanner immediately began warning of elevated toxin levels. The atmospheric contamination is already at dangerous levels, she reported. For my species, proceeding further would be suicide. Then it's a good thing you've got a walking chemical processing plant for company. Jackson winked, checking his equipment. I'll go in, find the power core, and boost our signal. You stay here and monitor the readings. Absolutely not. Litera protested. The protocols for such situations clearly state. Princess, Jackson interrupted gently, sometimes survival requires breaking a few protocols. He reached out, his hand brushing her arm in a gesture that sent unexpected shivers through her body. Trust me. The touch lingered, and Litera found herself struggling to remember all the reasons why getting emotionally involved with a human was a terrible idea. His skin was so warm, his presence so reassuring. I do trust you, she admitted softly, against all logic and training. I trust you. Something shifted in Jackson's expression, a softening around the eyes, a slight parting of his lips. Before Litera could process what was happening, he had closed the distance between them. The kiss was gentle but electric, crossing species boundaries with the same ease that humans apparently crossed dietary ones. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Jackson gave her that roguish grin she'd come to adore. "For luck," he explained. "Human tradition." "How convenient," Litera murmured, her fingers unconsciously touching her lips. Perhaps you'll need more luck when you return. Count on it, Princess." With a final wink, he activated his tactical lights and disappeared into the darkness of the mine, leaving Litera to wonder just how much her life was about to change because of one impossibly adaptable human. Part 2, Chemical Warriors. Deep within the toxic tunnels, Jackson's tactical lights illuminated ancient mining equipment covered in crystalline growths. His enhanced filtration mask processed the poisonous atmosphere while his body handled the residual toxins that slipped through. The deeper he went, the more his instincts told him something was off about this abandoned facility. "Status report," Litera's voice crackled through his communicator, concern evident in her tone. "Still breathing, Princess," he replied, grinning despite himself. "Though I've found something interesting. These mining operations weren't just extracting crystals." He approached a sealed door marked with warning symbols in multiple languages. The security panel still showed signs of power, a good sign for their rescue plans, but the implications made his skin crawl. "What do you mean?" Litera asked. "I'm sending you images now." He activated his scanner's visual feed. "Look familiar?" There was a sharp intake of breath over the comm. "Those are Navarian military markings." "But that's impossible, my people never had operations in this sector." "Well, Princess, looks like somebody's been keeping secrets." Jackson used his emergency override codes to access the panel, and I'm about to find out what they are. The door slid open with a hiss, revealing a laboratory that looked nothing like a mining facility. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing data streams that made Jackson whistle low. They were studying human biology, he reported, scanning through the files. "Specifically, our digestive system and adaptive capabilities. Looks like your people were trying to replicate our ability to process toxins." That's treason against the Galactic Council," Litera whispered. "These experiments were explicitly forbidden after the Treaty of Neural." Jackson continued exploring the lab, his tactical vest brushing against dusty equipment. "Seems like someone thought the potential benefits outweighed the risks. Can't say I blame them. Human biological adaptability is pretty impressive." "This isn't funny, Jackson," Litera snapped, using his first name for the first time. "If this information gets out, it could restart the genetic wars. Or," Jackson suggested, his voice softening, "it could lead to something better. Cooperation instead of theft. Shared knowledge instead of stolen secrets." He found the main power core and began the reactivation sequence. As systems came online, more data flooded the screens, including surveillance footage from before the facility was abandoned. "Litera," he said carefully, "I think you should see this. Can you make it to the first chamber? The air's clean enough there now." Minutes later, they stood together in the entrance chamber, watching historical footage of humans and Navarians working side by side, not as captives or test subjects, but as willing participants in a joint research program. "They were trying to help us," Litera realized, her golden eyes wide. "My people were dying from environmental toxins after the Great Migration. These humans, they volunteered to help find a solution." Jackson wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. Looks like cooperation between our species goes deeper than anyone knew." She turned to face him, her pale fingers tracing the contours of his chest through his vest. "Perhaps we're not so different after all. We're different enough to make things interesting," he murmured, leaning down to capture her lips in a kiss that held none of the hesitation of their first. The kiss deepened, and Litera found herself pressed against the cool crystal wall, her body responding to his touch in ways that defied her species' supposedly logical nature. His warmth, his strength, the very alienness of him, it all combined into an intoxicating mixture that made her head spin. "Jackson," she gasped as his lips traced the sensitive tip of her ear. "The rescue signal's already activated," he murmured against her skin. "We have time." Time stretched and compressed as they explored each other, their bodies finding ways to bridge the gap between their species. Every touch, every kiss was a new discovery, a celebration of their differences and similarities. Later, as they lay together on their makeshift bedding, Litera traced patterns on Jackson's chest. "Your heart beats so fast," she marveled. "Everything about you is so intense." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Human metabolism," he explained with a grin. "We burn hot in everything we do." "So I've noticed," she replied, a smile playing at her lips. "Though I still can't believe what you're willing to put in your mouth." "Speaking of which." Jackson sat up suddenly, serious. "We need to decide what to do about this facility. This information could change everything, or start another war." Litera considered, her diplomatic training warring with her newfound understanding of humanity's potential. Perhaps it's time for both our peoples to learn the truth. About the past, and about what's possible when we work together." The laboratory's holographic displays cast a soft blue glow over Jackson and Litera as they delved deeper into the research files. Their bodies remained close, still humming with the lingering electricity of their intimate encounter, but their minds were now focused on the revolutionary discovery before them. "Look at this," Jackson pointed to a complex molecular diagram. "They actually succeeded. The researchers found a way to modify Navarian biology using synthesized human digestive enzymes." Litera leaned forward, her silver hair brushing against his shoulder. "These adaptation rates are unprecedented. How did they achieve this without triggering cellular rejection?" "That's the brilliant part," Jackson grinned, pulling up another file. "They used human gut bacteria as a delivery system. Your people's sensitivity to toxins wasn't just about digestion, it was about the entire microbiome." Part 3, The Gathering Storm. Heading, The Council of Elders. After his first trial, Jackson was given time to rest and recover within the sanctuary. The Lumina elders provided him with food and water, and he spent hours meditating, trying to understand the energy that now flowed through him. Lyra stayed by his side, guiding him through the process and answering his questions as best she could. But despite her reassurances, Jackson couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than she was telling him. One evening, as the twin sun set and the sanctuary was bathed in a soft, golden light, Lyra approached him with a serious expression. "The elders wish to speak with you," she said. "They believe it is time for you to learn the full truth." Jackson's heart skipped a beat. "The full truth?" he asked. Lyra nodded. "There is much you still do not know about our world, and about the darkness that threatens it. The elders will explain everything." Jackson followed Lyra to a large chamber deep within the sanctuary, where the elders were gathered around a circular table made of crystal. The room was filled with a soft, humming energy, and the air was thick with anticipation. As Jackson entered, the elders turned to face him, their eyes filled with a mixture of hope and concern. "Jackson Holt," one of the elders said, his voice deep and resonant. "You have proven yourself worthy of the first trial. But the path ahead is fraught with danger, and you must understand the full extent of what you are facing." Jackson nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. "I'm ready," he said, though he wasn't entirely sure if he was. Heading, The History of the Darkness. The elder gestured for Jackson to sit, and he did so, his eyes fixed on the elder as he began to speak. "Long ago, our world was a place of peace and harmony," the elder said. "The energy that flows through this land was pure, and it sustained us, giving us life and power. But that all changed when the darkness came." Jackson's eyes widened as the elder continued. "The darkness is an ancient force, a corruption that seeks to consume all light and life. It first appeared centuries ago, in the form of a powerful being known as the Shadow King. He was once one of us, a lumina of great power and wisdom. But he was consumed by greed and ambition, and he sought to harness the energy of our world for his own gain. The elder's voice grew somber as he spoke. The Shadow King's actions caused a great imbalance, and the darkness spread across our world, corrupting everything it touched. We fought against him, but his power was too great. In the end, we were forced to seal him away, using the heart of Lumina to trap him in a prison of light. Jackson's mind raced as he tried to process what he was hearing. But if he's sealed away, why is the darkness still a threat? He asked. The elder's expression darkened. The seal is weakening, he said. And the darkness is growing stronger. If it is not stopped, it will break free, and our world will be consumed. Heading: The Prophecy. Jackson's heart pounded in his chest as the elder's words sank in. What can I do? He asked, his voice trembling slightly. The elder's eyes met his, filled with a mixture of hope and determination. You are the one foretold in the prophecy, he said. The one who can bridge the gap between our worlds and bring light to the darkness. But to do so, you must first complete the trials and unlock the full power within you. Jackson's mind was reeling as he tried to process what he was hearing. What are the trials? He asked. The elder's expression softened. The trials are tests of your strength, your courage, and your spirit, he said. Each one will challenge you in different ways, and each one will bring you closer to understanding the true nature of the energy within you. Jackson nodded, his determination growing with every word. I'll do whatever it takes, he said. The elder smiled, a faint glimmer of hope in his eyes. Then your journey begins now, he said. The next trial awaits. Heading: The Second Trial. Jackson followed Lyra out of the chamber, his mind racing with the elder's words. The second trial was to take place in the heart of the crystalline forest, a place where the energy of the world was at its strongest. As they walked, Lyra explained what he could expect. The second trial is a test of your courage, she said. You will face your deepest fears, and you must overcome them if you are to succeed. Jackson's heart pounded in his chest as they approached a large, crystalline archway. Beyond it, the forest was dark and foreboding, the air thick with an oppressive energy. This is where I leave you, Lyra said, her voice filled with concern. You must face this trial alone. Jackson nodded, his determination unwavering. I'll be back, he said, before stepping through the archway and into the darkness. As he ventured deeper into the forest, the air grew colder, and the energy around him became more intense. Shadows danced at the edges of his vision, and he could feel the darkness pressing in on him. But he pressed on, his mind focused on the task at hand. He had faced the darkness once before, and he would do so again. Heading: The Confrontation. After what felt like hours, Jackson emerged into a clearing, and his heart skipped a beat. Standing before him was a figure, its form shifting and twisting like smoke. But this time, it wasn't a shadowy monster. It was him. The figure was a dark reflection of himself, its eyes filled with malice and hatred. You think you can defeat me? The figure sneered, its voice a twisted echo of his own. You are weak, just as you have always been. Jackson's heart pounded in his chest as he faced his dark reflection. I am not weak, he said, his voice steady despite the fear that threatened to consume him. The figure laughed, a cold, hollow sound that sent a shiver down his spine. You are nothing, it said. You will always be nothing. Part 4, The Journey Home. Heading: A New Alliance. With the data from the laboratory secured, Jace and Lyra set out to find a way off the planet. The journey was fraught with danger, but their bond grew stronger with each challenge they faced. As they reached the rendezvous point, a Zorathian ship descended from the sky, its sleek design a stark contrast to the rugged landscape. The hatch opened, and a group of Zorathian soldiers emerged, their weapons drawn. Identify yourselves, the leader demanded, his violet eyes narrowing as he took in Jace's human features. Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady and commanding. I am Lyra Voss, diplomat of the Zorathian High Council. This is Jace Tanner, a human who saved my life. We have vital information that must be delivered to the Council immediately. The soldiers hesitated, but Lyra's authority was undeniable. They lowered their weapons and allowed Jace and Lyra to board the ship. As they traveled back to the Zorathian homeworld, Lyra couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. The data they had uncovered could change everything, not just for their species, but for the entire galaxy.